5 UN peacekeeping bases in the Democratic Republic of Congo will close on Monday. The UN mission there, MONUSCO, described it as a change in operational style, but it comes against a backdrop of wider cuts to the UN peacekeeping budget, a policy advocated by the US. So what does the change mean in practice? Well, the UN spends $1.2 billion a year funding the peacekeeping force in the DRC. That makes it both the largest and costliest UN mission. But the military component of the mission is now being cut by 3,000 troops. The 5 bases being cut are in the troubled North Kivu province, which has been marred by violence between rival militias. In total, UN peacekeeping deploys more than 100,000 soldiers and civilians worldwide at an annual cost of nearly $8 billion. For more on this, TRT World's Africa reporter Fidelis Mba joins me now live. Let's start with the DRC. What will these cuts mean for that country?
Well, for the civilians, they feel that they've not been protected enough. In fact, there have been protests in eastern Kivu where the people accused the troops of just being tourists. They say they see them drive around in 4x4s, fly over them with helicopters, and that when they actually need them, they're never there. But again, if you look at it, their presence sometimes scares some of these fighters. But again, now that they're cutting the number of troops and just saying that they will be deploying only when there's a need for it, it might be really tricky in terms of protecting people. We might just give more like create an open field for these militia groups to have a field there in terms of trying to control the resources in that area, because it's an area that is rich in resources, and all this fight is about who controls which field, where they have to mine what in that region. So it's really for the average people who are just living, the civilians, they're actually going to be really hard hit by this.
What about the scaling back of UN peacekeeping forces more generally? What is that going to mean?
Scaling down would actually more like escalate crisis in some of the countries. We look at Mali, where they're even struggling. The UN is even struggling to contain the violence in Mali. And now you want to scale down. You're also talking about South Sudan, where people are being killed almost on a daily basis, and you're trying to scale down, and now DRC as well. So it's something that even though the US government, which is the major funder of, which has shoulders the bulk of the UN funding for peace operations, is calling for a cut. And they're saying now they've gotten about $600 million from, cut off from the annual budget. But then when you do this, you should take into consideration the plight of civilians who are the receiving end, because some of these militia groups, they have people backing them and they have arms. They can defend themselves, unlike the civilians who are not armed.
You say civilians feel like when they need these peacekeeping troops, they're not really there, particularly in the DRC. I mean, what use is it having them there then? Are they really making that much of a difference?
In some cases, yes, their presence scares away, people. They don't want to just carry out attacks. But again, sometimes also depending on their mandate, like for instance, in Central African Republic, where militia groups are fighting, and the UN armored vehicle will just be there, and the UN officers are smartly dressed and sit there while people are being killed right in front of them. This also happens in other areas. So I think it's a case of trying to redefine their mandate, trying to actually give them control that, look, when you see a case of violence, you have to intervene. You don't have to wait until you do assessment to get instructions as to when to move in. If you see someone trying to shoot someone in front of you, you should be able to intervene. I'm not saying my mandate, does not include the use of force. So I think it's for the UN to really review this rather than just cutting down, especially in areas where there's high level of violence.
Very much changes on the horizon then. Fidelis Mba, TRT World's Africa reporter. Thank you.